Hello everyone, bringing you a video today talking about this. And this of course is a Light Anti-Gas Respirator. You've seen several videos I've made on these previously. This one's a little bit different. This is an Australian made Light Anti-Gas Respirator. These are fairly rare. It arrived recently in the unboxing video I did, the stuff Kieran had put together for me, which is very, very kind of him. This one came off a chap on Facebook. They're not particularly common. They're not very rare. I know of several of these in existence, but they're not particularly common and they're interesting. So I thought I'd do a video on this today. What I'm going to do is have this on the blanket as I normally do, looking at the Haversack. They don't have the full contents, but looking at this in detail. But I thought it might be useful to see the harness and so forth details, which we'll talk about in more detail, with it on the polystyrene head here, just to give you sort of a visual all the way around, give you an idea of how it looks when it's worn. Obviously I wouldn't wear these, the filters are not safe to wear, to have on. And this one's a little bit, there's some rust and stuff on the buckles and so forth. Though I have cleaned it, I don't really want to wear this one. I'm sure it would be fine, but I've just decided not to. And also given its condition and so forth, I don't want to be taking it on and off. Obviously I've put it on the mannequin head here to show you, but that's easier to do. You can see what you're doing and you can put it on in a way that's not going to be uncomfortable and be more delicate with the elastic and so forth. But anyway, we'll get into looking at the details of this now, and the haversack that it came in as well.
Okay, so here we have the respirator, and I apologise if my voice is a little bit nasal, suffering from a little bit of a cold at the moment. I don't think it's anything more serious than that, but we'll see. But anyway, the respirator we have here, as you can see, one of the most distinctive parts of this is both the coloration of the metalwork, which obviously is this khaki green colour, sort of olive drab, and the camouflage effect of the facepiece itself, which is achieved by a marbling effect of the rubber itself. It's not a paint finish, it's a mix of two different colours of rubber. And the manual for this specifically states that this was basically for jungle use. It was to improve the utility of the respirator in jungle conditions by giving this camouflage effect. And obviously to make the metalwork blend in better as well than the grey paint used on British examples. So other than that, the respirator is very similar to its British counterpart. If we remove the canister here, we'll have a quick look at this first. In terms of shape and size, very similar to the British. You can see some lettering around the side there. If we bring that round there, and I remember it's Willow, I think, is the manufacturer. You can just see that up here. And I think it's stamped around here as well. There we go. Number 243 Willow. But otherwise, as I say, very similar. And we'll bring a British respirator in a minute and just have a direct comparison of the features. One feature which is noticeably different, other than the obvious visual features of the difference in colour, is an extra strap on the head harness here to help support the canister when it's screwed into the side of the respirator. And that hooks onto this little ring here, which itself attaches to the clamp for the metal ring that holds the threaded section into the rubber of the mask there. So that's quite an interesting little feature. Behind that we can see a stamp, and we can see here Kenworth 1943, 1943. And as is common with British respirators, you have the size normal stamped into this side here, and you can really see the khaki finish of the rubber there. There's quite a bit of rust on this when I got it, but I've managed to clean up most of the metalwork fairly well, but you can still see the staining on the head harness there. You can see that this strap, the little buckle to support the canister, literally just has a hook and just hooks into the ring there, as you can see. So that quite neatly unhooks there. The head harness is otherwise the same, other than that extra strap. It's otherwise the same as British canvas piece at the back here. The same method of the straps adjusting through the buckles on the edge of the respirator facepiece, and then the excess just being held in place with a little ring that moves up and down the elastic there. We have a look inside. Just take the head harness. The elastic is still in very good condition, which is useful. Just fold that back carefully there. You can see inside the facepiece here, get the light in there, you can see the intake valve there, which is a simple rubber washer, as is common with the civilian respirators, the British Light Anti-Gas Respirator, and also this, I believe, is the valve you'll find in the bottom of small box respirator canisters. So it's a very simple but long-lived part of the design, and it works. So why would you why would you change it? So that simply provides the little on-return valve in there, and then we have the exhale valve housing at the front there, as you can see. Inside of the eyepieces, all basically the same as British practice, but we'll bring a British respirator in now alongside this, so we can have a direct comparison of the two. So with the face pieces alongside each other, we can more clearly see obviously the visual differences. So you can more clearly see the difference in the colour of the metalwork, and obviously the camouflage effect of the Australian respirator compared to the British one. The eyepieces, of course, also screw in the British respirator, whereas they are fixed in the Australian, as you can see there, the difference between them. Looking at the back here, you can see the head harnesses are essentially the same design, just with that extra strap, as already mentioned, for the canister on the Australian example, but otherwise the head, pad, etc. very, very similar. And you can see again there the stamping of the mould. You can see the sizes here, and you can see on this side here we have the date stamp, and everything is in a similar location. You can see the similarity of the inhale valves there. Slightly different. The Australian slightly more crude in manufacture, the finish that is, but otherwise very, very similar, as you can see. And we have the canisters here, obviously British on the left, Australian on the right, and again you can see the khaki effect of the paint there compared to the grey of the British, but otherwise the design again very similar, just a little bit more of a lip around the intake there on the canister, but otherwise extremely similar design, very little in them. Obviously it is essentially the same design, just manufactured in Australia with very slight differences, but just gives a direct comparison there for interest's sake, really. That's the canisters. Obviously this one reissued in Denmark after the war, as many of them were, but yes, that's a comparison of the canisters as well. We'll have a look now at the Haversack which came with this, and as you can see, this is made to Australian spec for light anti-gas respirator Haversacks. The main difference from British manufacture being the lift the dot fastener in order to open the main compartment there, as opposed to a quick release tab. If you look inside, it otherwise has the same features as a British Haversack. You can see a pouch at the bottom there with a little press stud to take the anti-dimming outfit, and a white loop at the rear which takes the strap folded up, the shoulder strap, when not being used. The reason for that, of course, is at the rear here we do have hooks to attach this to the belt, so the shoulder strap will be removed in such situations and could be folded neatly away at the back of the Haversack there, using that little white strap which is also on a press stud. And at the back here we have a compartment for eye shields, and then obviously on each side here we have the pockets, one to take ointment, the other to take cotton waste. And as I say, in that regard, generally speaking, it's in line with British practice, but obviously there are the slight design changes in terms of having the lifter dot fastener at the flap here, which is just an expedient of Australian manufacture. Also, it's made in this two-tone colour. The manual for this specifies the Mark 6 anti-dimming outfit, which of course is the impregnated cloth, the simplified impregnated cloth version that was introduced during the war. And that is what is specified in the manual. So I will get the contents together for this at some point. It came with some ointment. It did also come with an anti-dimming outfit, but a Mark 7, a post-war Mark 7 example. So I'll replace that and put together wartime period contents for this. This also, it really does copy the British design in the way the strap works as well. Again, these were all rather rusty when I got it, but I've managed to clean them up. And you can attach the strap by folding it and removing it from that buckle, and then just feeding the strap through the ring and taking it off. And obviously you can adjust the strap up and down using these buckles as well to lengthen or shorten it. No D-rings on this Haversack, as is common with some British manufacturers. Some British manufacturers have a little D-ring each side at the back here, through which a string can be used to secure it around the body. This doesn't have that. We'll very quickly contrast this with another Australian example of the Haversack, which shows some further design differences, which we've already looked at in a previous video, but I thought it'd be interesting to compare two different Australian Haversacks. So the other Haversack we're going to contrast this with here is another Australian made Haversack, which we've looked at previously in a video looking at light anti-gas respirator Haversacks. It's a slightly more obvious two-tone finish, obviously with the sort of almost mint green canvas here, and the khaki, the olive colour of the rest of the Haversack. These are actually manufactured by the same company. If we look here, we've got MH&Co 1943 Light 2, and under here we have again MH&Co 1943 Light 2, so same year even, but they differ quite significantly in one area only, which is the way the strap attaches. Now this is in common with British practice and works very well. This example has a 1937 pattern type 1-inch buckle and a strap, and the end of this has actually been doubled over in order to give enough friction, and even then it does slide still in the buckle, as you can see. And I've previously said, obviously, this means that the only real bits which seem to fit the buckle, so the two end the same on the other side, is sort of a 2.5-inch section has been stitched over and doubled over to provide enough friction in the buckle in order to lock the strap in place. The only way you could shorten this off would be by passing the strap through, and then if we triple over a section like this and pass it through, you can then, it does need to be folded over 3 times in order to actually lock in place. If you get a tripled over section like that, that will then lock into the buckle. Just a rather clumsy way of doing it, especially when the original method works so well. Why it was done this way, I don't know. As I say, same manufacturer, the same year, so just a variation. There's no mark designation in the flap saying that this is, you know, a different mark of Haversack. Just a different method of doing it, different type of fittings, but not a very well engineered solution to the problem, especially as this actually does slide through the buckle when attached under enough tension. So, as I say, just an odd expedient of the Australian Haversacks. Obviously, the lift to dot fastener instead of the quick release is a well-known feature of these, which works perfectly well. This does not. So quite why they changed this. As I say, if you pull on the strap, you can just pull the strap out of the buckle. So it's not ideal. And why that was done, I do not know. The only way you could get that to lock in would be to double another length of, double it over again. So you've got the triple thickness of the actual material the strap's made from, and that will obviously lock into the buckle on the Haversack and hold it in place. But just the doubled over section at the end isn't really enough. But anyway, that's just a variation in the two Haversacks. As I say, same manufacturer, same year, just a slight change in the design. One last thing we'll have a look at here is the cork, which comes with these. And it also came with British Light Anti-Gas Respirators as well. Well, 2 corks on a piece of tape. And the idea of these, if we bring the respirator back in, is that the small cork fits in the outside of the canister there to waterproof it, like that. The tape then comes round the other cork and fits inside the respirator, inside the intake port there. This can be looped inside the Haversack in such a way as when the respirator is withdrawn, this will be looped through the little strap in the bottom of the Haversack, which takes the shoulder strap when it's folded. When the respirator is withdrawn, this will just pluck the corks out. So when carried in the Haversack, this waterproofs the canister, and then obviously once withdrawn, it pulls the corks out and away you go. The respirator's ready to use. This is something which had been included with the Light Anti-Gas Respirator. Obviously, amphibious operations were definitely part of the European theatre of operations in 1944, and as such, and prior to that, of course, so the idea of waterproofing the canister was not an exclusively Australian idea, but it's interesting to see they took this part of the design on as well. Obviously, they were involved in a large number of amphibious operations in the Pacific, so ongoing use of that, ongoing use of this respirator in further amphibious operations, waterproofing the canister would have been an important part of that. Although obviously I've not really seen any evidence to show these in use in the field. I believe there is some footage of them in training, but I've yet to see photographic or film evidence of them in use by combat troops who don't seem to have carried respirators. In common with British troops in the Far East during the late war period, respirators tended to be ditched as a weight-saving measure, and measured against the limited threat of gas warfare at the time. Had landings been necessary on the Japanese home islands, and had there been fears of Japan throwing in gas attacks as part of their last-ditch defence, it could have been a very different story, and of course respirators would then have been issued out again.
So there we are, that's a look at the Australian-made Light Anti-Gas Respirator. An interesting respirator in itself, obviously, in terms of there's detailed differences from the British design, and the fact that it's in camouflage. Really, really interesting detail. To those who are interested, obviously, perhaps not to everyone else, but to those who like this sort of thing, an interesting detail. If you found this interesting and you'd like to see more, then please do obviously consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, so you can see future uploads. You'll be alerted of that, of course, if you use the little bell button next to the subscribe button to set that you want to be alerted when I upload future videos. If you really like my videos and you'd like to support the channel, as some have, and I'm very grateful to them, you can do so through Patreon and PayPal. There are links to both of those down below in the description. And as usual, thank you very much to everyone who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated. If you want to keep up with the channel on social media, there is of course also the Facebook and the Instagram page, and now Twitter as well. They're all linked down below should you wish to keep up with what's going on the channel over there. And there's also an email address. If you don't use social media particularly, but you want to make contact, you can do through that channel as well. There's a email address down below in the description too, if should you wish to make contact. But that's everything I wanted to cover in this video, I think. So until next time, bye for now.